So again, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of land that we're meeting on today and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So today we'll explore some of the key questions that we regularly hear from people who are keen to find out if fostering's right for them. Most of the questions are pretty standard, but you'll have other questions that we haven't thought of, and so nothing's out of bounds. You can ask us anything, and we'll do our best to cover that today. Okay, so some of the key things that we will explore today is, first of all, obviously, who is Life Without Barriers? What is foster care? Where are more foster carers needed? The different types of foster care, and we'll tell you a little bit more about children in care, stories from care, and who can be a carer. We'll also cover some of our most frequently asked questions and where to from there. So Life Without Barriers is a leading social purposes organisation. We work in more than 440 communities across Australia. We at the moment in WA, there are over 4,500 children and young people in care, of which over 3,000 are in kinship and family care. We also work with young people and children with disabilities. That would be over 5,000, of which 1,800 are NDIS participants. We work with refugees and asylum seekers, nearly 5,000, and we also work in the community care space, of which we work with about over 6,000 participants. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, we work with over nearly 2,000, and we partnership with many different agencies. So what is foster care? For many children and young people, it is not safe to live at home. And what we are trying to do is to find supportive family scenarios for whereby children can land softly, find a place to heal and grow. There are different time frames for children, and it's it can be an overnight stay. It could be a week, could be a year, could be an 18-year-older. So yeah, there are many different time frames, but mostly foster care is where we're asking beautiful people, like for all of you who are interested, to take care of children who aren't your own. They do have their own families. Sometimes they'll go home and sometimes they won't, but mostly they will have contact with their families, but we'll talk more about that later. The number keeps rising. So, currently there are 50,000 children who are unable to safely live at home in Australia. So we obviously are always looking for carers. I know that whenever I see that number, it astonishes me, particularly as I know it's growing. So where are more foster carers needed? Well, that would be everywhere, absolutely everywhere. So here's a little map of the demographics of where care is happening across Australia. Here in WA, we have, I know the number has changed, but according to this map, it was 1,633 children in foster care, of which 1,957 are in kinship care, which is a good thing. Here in WA, we don't, in Life Without Barriers, we don't currently work with kinship care, but there are, the department does, and so do they, and so do other Life Without Barriers across the country. So there are different types of foster care, as I said earlier, and this will just outline a few of them. So we have respite care. Respite care can be anything from, overnight stay to a few days during the school holidays. It could be, we try and make it a regular arrangement. So once every 2 weeks, once a month. It's a break. It's a break for our long-term foster carers or short-term foster carers, that hopefully, children actually enjoy, because they go to the same respite carers. It's a break for them as well, break from their routine. I guess it's like going to stay with an auntie or, nana in an ordinary situation. What's key to know with Life Without Barriers respite carers is the children the respite that carers get usually it's around children that have more complex needs, that may be a medical diagnosis, or high behaviours. There's a lot of complexity. So yeah, those carers definitely do need a break. So yeah, we're always looking for specialised respite carers. Then we have the emergency or crisis care carers. This is where, it's a last minute arrangement. We could have a request to find a space for a child or sibling group, in the afternoon, Friday afternoon. It could be a Wednesday afternoon. It could be a weekend, middle of the night. The thing with emergency care, which is a little bit tricky, is it could be anything between 7 and 21 days, because that's the amount of time it takes for the department to kind of figure out what the next move is, whether they're going to be going back home, or whether they're going to another short-term or long-term arrangement. So with emergency and crisis carers, we do need you to have availability, because very often within that window period, those children aren't going to school. Sometimes they do, but often it's it's a crisis situation. So there is a desperate need for emergency carers, but you have to kind of have that availability, or somebody at home at least. Okay, so we have also short-term to medium-term care, and that can be from anything from day one to, short-term can be a little bit misleading, because that can be anything from day 1 to 2 years. So very often within that space, the short-term, medium-term time is when we're looking at a reunification plan, and that's where we're trying, the departments are working closely with family to try and get children and young people back home. There'll be contact arrangements, and there'll be various things that the biological family are trying to do to be able to get their children home. If that is unsuccessful, that short-term, medium-term arrangement often turns into a long-term care arrangement, which can then be extended out to an 18-year order, or in exceptional circumstances, a special guardianship order. But I won't really go into too much of the jargon and the legalities of that. We can discuss that more if you make a formal inquiry, and we can go through those arrangements. But the key thing to know is there's a lot of different types of care and I suppose timeframes. You'll see on the slideshow we talk about kinship foster care, and as I said to you earlier, we don't really do that here in WA at Life Without Barriers. That's held by the Department of Communities. But that said, kinship care is great. It is always better for a child or a young person to go into care with a family member or relative, because obviously that's less traumatic. Mm. Did you want to jump in there, Heidi?
Okay, so we have several children, as you know. We have currently, I think, the whole gamut except for emergency care. So we do respite care. So we have children that come to our house every 3 weeks, and we have been having them for over a year now. We do short to medium care. So we do have children that are on reunification currently, and we work quite closely with their family, and we have quite a lot of contact with them, and currently a lot of contact with the department, because there's a lot of work happening with helping them go home. And we also have long term. So we all have 4 other children which are on 18-year orders, so they'll be with us long term as well. So yeah, we sort of fill the whole gamut, I think.
Yeah, what you do is amazing, Heidi. Absolutely amazing. I'm sorry, I've got a cat that's jumping up. Can you believe it? Never jumps up, but now it is. The joys of homework.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Thank you, Heidi. So, okay, so what is our approach to foster care, that being life without barriers? So we work very much under the framework of care, the care model, and that's where we're grounded by the 6 principles of the care model, which is creating conditions for change, because we want to reach, the best possible outcomes for children and young people in the out-of-home care system, and we find this practice framework is able to it's evidence informed, and it's a therapeutic model, so it's able to address that. So the conditions, the care principles are the following. So relationship based. Everything we do is driven by the relationships we form. So obviously children need trusting and meaningful relationships with adults. Often they haven't, attached meaningfully in younger years, particularly. So it's crucial that they build that emotional security and that safety. Did you want to add something, Heidi?
No, I was just going to say, for us, attachment is the most important thing, and being able to teach that and teaching them the safety around it, so that they can learn to trust it. But that sometimes is a really long-term thing to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, these children come from a very different experiential background. Some of them are hypervigilant, and some of them don't trust, adults and this relationship stuff and this attachment stuff. And it takes a lot of patience. And that's why we call this a therapeutic model, because we're asking you to care for these children therapeutically. So, and there's a lot of training.
A lot of consistency.
There's a lot of training around that. So, but the basis of it is, a relationship-based principle. The next is that we're developmentally focused, which is, we want to use strategies that are going to get the best out of children. We want to set them up for success, not failure. So we want to work with children at their developmental level. So that's really, really crucial. The next is a trauma-informed approach. We always need to consider the impact that trauma has on these children and young people. So we very much work from a model whereby we don't say what's wrong with you. We ask what's happened to you. We need to be looking, because trauma changes the brain. In a developing child, it changes the way, outlook on life, responses, triggers. There's a huge effect that trauma, together with attachment disorder and all the other things that have happened, has on the child. So we need to adjust our expectations accordingly as well. Family involved, that's really important, and I think Heidi can speak to this more, but definitely, the child's identity is hugely tied to their family. No matter what has happened, their family will always be their family. So we need to integrate that. We need to respect that. And where possible, we need to, collaborate with family.
Mm-hmm. So we have a lot to do with our families. Currently, we have we are involved with 4 different families in our home. And we speak mostly with the parents. Sometimes parents aren't always safe. So in that case, we just work with the extended families. We work with the grandparents. We have morning teas. We meet at the park. It's just so important for the children. And look, we've got a couple of children that have been with us for 10 years now, and all the eldest one wanted when he was little was for us to all go to the park and have a barbecue together, because then he felt like his family was complete and we were all on the same page. Well, it took us quite a while to do that, be able to go to the park and have a barbecue together, but we've done that, and it's just so important for the children, and it makes them feel like they're not working one against the other, that we're all working with them and for them, with the children. So yeah, that's really important to us, but it does take a little while to get there and feel safe in doing it. It can be quite daunting at first. Because, the
Absolutely.
children have usually come in under not very nice circumstances. So it's really hard to sort of put that aside and just work just for the children.
I guess, more successful carers that I've seen, really have that lens whereby it's all about the child, not about them and their ego. And I know that sounds a little bit blunt, but that's really what it's about.
And sometimes the parents are a little bit intimidating. I get that too, but you just got to go beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, sometimes it isn't possible. And obviously, family involvement, physical family involvement is definitely risk assessed. And that's something we have to get sanctioned by the Department of Communities. So that doesn't happen in every situation. But, even if that direct connection isn't possible, if it's not safe and it's not possible, there's still the expectation that, you as carers don't badmouth families by any shape, manner or form in front of children, and that, you do your best to, I guess, foster that connection if possible. If that means, children write letters or, have pictures up of their family members, there's various ways it can, we can work it.
But in saying that, often, and I'm not going to say always, but often there is at least extended family that you can form relationships with. The kids really need to feel connected no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly, if, the child's from a diverse cultural background, cultural identity, connection is massively important to, the well-being of that child and the outcomes of that child in every way. Okay, so then we have competency centered. So this really means is, children need to develop at their own pace, and we need to, give them the skills, the everyday skills, the life skills to negotiate life, really. So competency centers is just about upskilling, building confidence, and giving children social life skills. And lastly, we have what's called ecologically oriented, which really is about providing a safe, nurturing environment, whereby we can, engender the right values, and that really help children to thrive and grow.
And if I could just interject one more time, I'd like to go back to the developmentally focused. Because our children usually have all had quite extensive trauma, developmentally wise, they're often a little behind. It's horrible to say what we would call our normal. We really need, and there is a lot of training around that where we need to work at the child's pace and be really encouraging for them and also be their voice, because they often need somebody to really work behind the scenes for them at school and in the community. That's a really big one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Heidi. So in terms of meeting children in care, obviously, as I said, there are many reasons why children come into care, and they come from all walks of life. So we like to think that each child has their own unique set of experiences, and obviously culture comes into that, but almost all children that come into care have obviously had stuff happen to them. So they come from really complex social and family situations, and many have suffered neglect, trauma, abuse, all of the above. So yeah, that's gonna have a huge impact on the way they see the world. And sometimes that can mean, children exhibit that trauma or manifest that in what we call trauma-based behaviors, which can be a little confronting and certainly challenging for you as carers. However, there's a lot of support, there's a lot of training and preparation. But I always say you need those innate qualities. You need the chip to become a carer. Not everybody has that. I mean, we can teach you as much, we can teach you loads and loads about trauma and attachment disorder, sexualized behaviors, all of those things, but we can't teach you how to be naturally nurturing, patient, flexible, all of the attributes that you really do need as carers. So, yeah, because sometimes it can be a tough gig, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have Karen here on the screen, and yes, so Karen has a full-time job and is excited about his plans for the future. He entered foster care at the age of 12, and he says his foster carers have played a huge part in who he is today.
Yeah.
So children that come into care are aged between 0 to 17. And as I said, they come from a range of cultural backgrounds. And what's really crucial to know is they have families who are important to them.
Yeah.
As I said, they've all suffered from some kind of trauma. And, you know, if you can just imagine yourselves being removed from your home, from your loved ones, from everything that you hold dear, all the familiarity, your pets, your room, everything, being removed from that alone is hugely traumatic. And not knowing what the next day is going to bring, you know, is very traumatic for children. That compounded with, you know, the challenges they've faced, which have brought them into care, can be really devastating. And that's where we need lots of empathy and patience. So, what's the most important role of foster carers? As I said earlier, we need carers with the attributes and beliefs that we know are good for children. And I guess, yeah, a great way to listen to, or to get some of that information, is to really listen to other carers' stories and experiences. Now, we have some video clips here on the screen, but they notoriously fail to work. And I tried to get them to work this afternoon, and some were working and some won't. So I don't want to waste anyone's time, but I will say to you, these stories of Gary and Shell and Stacey, Chris and Sophian, they're all on our website. And really easy to find if you want to go onto our website and have a look and listen to those stories. Yeah, that could be really, really helpful.
And also, I'll pop the link up in the chat box, so it'll give you the link to go straight through to the website to go and have a look at these stories.
Perfect. Thank you, Heidi. Technology. So anyone can be a carer. I say anyone can be a carer. There are a few, you know, there are obviously a few boundaries, but it is likely that you can be a carer. You can be, you know, married, you can be single in a de facto relationship, you can be divorced. You know, carers come from all cultural backgrounds and experience levels. You don't need, it's not a test in terms of, it's not IQ based or anything like that. You know, your ability to care for a child is about you know, what those innate qualities I spoke about. That's what really matters. So this is Rachel, who's 36, and she's been providing respite care. She finds that it's a great way for her to be able to give back, and really works within her lifestyle because she works full time. So she's able to offer respite on weekends. So the criteria is that you must be over 21, and it says with relevant life experience. I guess that's quite subjective. I suppose, you know, you need to have an open mind. You need to have had some life experience, and I guess, yeah, I guess you wouldn't be really looking into foster care if you didn't have some understanding of the world and how it works. So yeah, so I guess that experience, I mean, experience is desirable, but as I said, it's not necessary. We can give you some skills as long as you have those innate qualities. We need you to be well and healthy. We do ask you to have a very simple, brief medical as well. If you know, obviously we are about keeping people intact during this process. So if your doctor feels that it's not suitable for you health-wise, you know, we need to take that into consideration. You can be from any cultural background, as I said, single or in a relationship. We obviously need to put you through some background checks. We do police clearances and departmental screening. We'll also get some references from people that know you and can speak to your character. You can have children or not have children. We can place alongside biological children. Heidi can tell you about that. You need to be obviously active and willing to go through the process. There's a process, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And you will need to obviously complete the required training. So there's what we call pre-approval training. So that's your preparation training. And then once you become a carer, there's quite a bunch of other training bits and pieces that you need to do. But it's all self-development. And we find that carers that really embrace that and engage in that training are the ones that flourish, because trauma is contemporary. There's always new information on trauma and the various issues that children and young people face. So yeah, it's a good idea to keep yourself up to speed with that. So Heidi, you have children in care alongside your own children, right?
Yeah, yes. So when we first started caring, our youngest was 9 years old, and our next one, maybe he was a bit younger. I think our next one was 12 at the time, and then we had a 15-year-old. So yes, we did have a busy home, and we started off with 2 children. Currently, we still have 3 buyers at home because they tend to leave and always come back. But we just love it, and the kids love it, and they're such a calming influence on our children. It just works really well in our home. They're all buddies of all ages. They're a really good role model. They go out. My big boys go out to work every day and come home, so they're really good role models for the children, because often the children have lacked really good role modeling in their background in their home life. So for them to see a really well-functioning family is really healthy. Works really well.
And we've often seen that children of the household can be really influential. When all else fails, sometimes foster carers can stand on their heads and say, we don't, for example, we don't use language like that in this house, but when a biological child says that, then it has much more effect.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, in our house it's the big brother thing, so yeah, it definitely works.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Heidi. So
one thing I will say though, I'll just back on that. With bio children, it is better if your foster children are younger, because often your bio children there can sometimes be a little bit of jealousy and that they're missing out, and the other child is getting more attention. So we always look to our foster children being younger than our own biological children.
Yeah, and that's generally a rule of thumb for us when we're matching. I'll speak to that more soon. But with matching, we hardly ever place children older than the youngest, except if it's a very short-term arrangement or it's a respite arrangement. Yeah, cool. So here are some frequently asked questions. We probably might have addressed some of these already, but let's just have a look. So yes, as I said, you can be single. About half our foster carers are single. So definitely you can be a same-sex couple. There's no issues with that at all. And as we've just said, you can have children or not. Obviously we'll look at through the assessment process at what kind of skills you have and developmental areas you have, and that will really inform the age and the child's behaviors that we match with you. If you have not had children of your own and very limited experience with children, we'll obviously take that into consideration when matching you with a child. We're not going to throw you into the deep end with a sibling group of 5 that are high in behaviors. So great foster care as well. Great foster carers, as I said, have patience and understanding. They have a great deal of commitment. We need carers that are going to hang in there. That's hugely important. Your availability and your capacity is also a really big part of it. So, I always say to people, really think about your lifestyle, think about your routine, if you have a really, really busy life and you're
we've
struggling
lost
to,
Sherry.
oh, can you not hear me anymore? Can you see me, Heidi? Can everyone hear me?
You're fine, Shirley. I think it's just Heidi that's frozen.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll carry on for now. Thank you, Kylie. Yeah, so what was I saying about carer attributes? So you need to have the time and availability, definitely. So is there space, is there space in your life and in your schedule, really? Because these kids will take up a lot of time and space and energy, as any child does, really. So the commitment, we need, as I said, carers that are going to hang in there when the going gets tough, that's hugely important. Are you back, Heidi? I can't hear you. I can see you though.
There you go. Sorry, I didn't realize it was me that dropped out.
No, that's okay. All right. Well, welcome back. Where was I? Okay, so we need, a huge attribute is flexibility, because things will change at the drop of a hat often. So, we find people who are very sort of set in their thinking and dogmatic in their thinking sometimes struggle a little bit because, the department sometimes make decisions that are last minute, or, for example, contact with family might be cancelled after you've, rearranged your life to make that work. So yeah, it can be a little bit frustrating. I mean, I'm not saying that happens all the time, but flexibility is certainly a good attribute to have. And as I said, time to give and commitments, and definitely commitments in strengthening family relationships. So let's talk about the process. So the assessment process it takes 4 to 5 months. It depends on you, though. We try and sort of take the assessment at your pace. Usually it's 4 to 5 months. Some people get through the assessment quicker. Other people take a year. It just depends on, how fast you kind of get through, I guess, what's required of you. It certainly is a learning journey. I like to say it's a learning journey. If you think of the assessment as that and not as a interrogation process, which is not, you'll probably enjoy it. We have a lot of people come to the end of the assessment actually saying, well, wow, I didn't really know that about myself, or I didn't really see my family in that way. So the assessors are really, really skilled at drawing out those competencies, which is kind of what we need to do to assess whether, you're up to the task of taking care of other people's children who have trauma. So there are 6 stages. The first stage is the initial inquiry, whereby, you obviously contact us through our website or ring us. We'll provide details at the end of the session. We'll obviously do a little bit of a screening interview first over the phone. And if that's all good, then we commence that with a home visit, whereby someone like myself will come out and have more of a personalised chat with you. It'll be about an hour and a half. We'll do a home safety check and just really go through the ins and outs, the process in more detail, answer any more questions, and have more discussion around what this actually is going to look like. Thereafter, we'll get the paperwork. So I would leave a whole bunch of paperwork with you, which a lot of people really hate paperwork, but yeah, it's part of the process. Unfortunately, you've got to do the paperwork. We do support you through that, though, and it's just filling up boxes, really. So yeah, the paperwork really will comprise of your references, your police checks, departmental screening, your personal details, medical form, that kind of thing. So that's really the paperwork. And once we get that in, we'll allocate you to an assessor, and that assessor will make time to come and see you, and probably about 4 to 5 visits. whereby we'll go through your life story, the ins and outs. We'll go through some case scenarios. It's just a preparation exercise as well. If during, those visits, the assessor kind of feels that this is not right for you, we will gently, but, clearly have that discussion with you, because we don't want to waste your time. And, sometimes this isn't right for people. They're just not quite ready for the journey. So we will be transparent with you throughout this process. So whilst you're in that assessment stage, we need that training that I spoke about earlier. So the training it's about 6 modules that you need to complete. And those modules are things like cultural awareness training, attachment disorder, trauma, that kind of thing. That's done through the department. It is compulsory for you to complete all 6 modules before you can be approved. Altogether, the 6 modules, I think, it comes up to about 19 hours. So over the space of 4 to 5 months, it's not too bad. Then once your assessment report has been successfully completed by your assessor, it goes to a panel, which is a lot more scarier than it sounds. They're really not scary people, but they will need to collaborate and discuss your assessment report, and then recommend you for approval or not. So there are some circumstances when panel have, they don't feel that somebody is ready for, fostering just yet. But as I said, throughout the process, we'll stay transparent with you, and you will always be given clear reasons as to why, we are saying what we're saying. Okay, so as I said to you earlier, there's loads of support. We are definitely not going to just throw you in the deep end. You are surrounded by a therapeutic team. There is, there's huge amounts of support. It helps if you can, if you are the kind of carers that can put your hand up for help as well, because sometimes we're not always going to know if you're struggling. So it's really good when we have carers that are able to say, hey, I need help. And, there's no judgment in that. That's definitely what we call reflective practice and self-awareness. That seems to be a good thing. But yeah, so there's loads of training, more training than I think anybody could ever get through once you're approved. That can be done online and in person. There's always somebody to take your call. That's 24/7, 365 days a year. There is a carer reimbursement that gets paid over to ensure that you're not out of pocket, and we can discuss that with you personally if you decide to make contact with us. There are, when I talk about specialised support, that's what I mean with the therapy team. They're clinicians and therapists available for children and for carers. There's counselling support as well. We provide respite to specialised carers, and there's a great carer networking team, which consists of wonderful people like Heidi, who look after other carers, which is really, really important.
It just makes such a difference to be able to talk to somebody who's actually living it. It's different being able to confide in someone and not feel that judgment and not feel scared to share your thoughts, because sometimes it's really not easy. And you've got to be mindful about who you do talk to, because not everybody gets it. Not everybody gets what it's like doing this 24/7. I just want to add to, as far as the support goes, we are all assigned our own caseworkers who works with us as a family, and they're invaluable. If you get on well with your caseworker, they're invaluable, and they're always there for you.
Yeah, and the caseworkers, they're a good lot, and they've got the children's best interests at heart, and carers. Yeah. So you, as Life Without Barriers carers, you theoretically you should be going through your caseworker, as Heidi said, that's assigned to you. There are case managers that are allocated to each child that are that work from the department, but essentially your caseworkers that are assigned to you are the conduits between you and the department. So effectively everything should go through them. They're your representative, and hopefully that makes things a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Okay, so where to from here? Well, if you'd like to continue with the conversation, you can glean lots more information from our website. There's also a number which I'm putting up now, which you can call, as well as my own number, Sherry E. Vincent, the Care Engagement Officer, and I put my number there on the screen. You're really welcome to contact me personally, and I'll do my very best to answer any other questions you may have. But if anybody's got any questions,
sorry, I was going to say, if anyone's got questions for tonight, pop them out in the chat box and we'll look at them quickly now. But if I could jump in, through experience, some of the things that have come up in the past are, can you have pets? Do you have to have a big house? Do all the children need their own bedrooms? You know what? We've got heaps of pets and heaps of children. I find pets really therapeutic in our house. We have dogs and cats. And the children go and have rough and tumbles in the back garden with their balls with the dogs. And also they'll sit on the couch and the cat will just come and sit near them. And even if they're sitting there with an iPad, you'll just see one little hand creep over and it just starts patting the cat's head. It's just so therapeutic for the children. So absolutely, as long as your animals are safe, my gosh, yes, have your pets.
And that's something we do look at, but they've got to have their own rooms. That is definitely a barrier standards. You've got to have a spare room.
You do need, the children need their own space. It's really important. So that's one thing that we have a couple of children that share, but they're often just a sibling group, or they've been in our house a really long time. So it grows into that. But ideally, they have to have their own bedrooms.
Yeah, sibling groups, can share. Yeah, absolutely. But if they're used to it and it's age appropriate.
Yeah.
But one of the criteria for children that, so certainly biological children of the household and foster children can't share a room.
No.
So if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat box. Be happy to answer them.
Poor Julie has just been watching our faces and can't hear anything she says.
Oh, no. Oh.
Julie, actually, I better type it since she can't hear us.
Oh, dear.
We are recording and we'll send you a copy. There.
Yes, this is being recorded, so it will be available as well to look at again.
Yeah. So my number's not on there. If you did want to have a chat to me personally, as from a carer's perspective, just give Sherry a call and she'll be happy to share my number or get your number from you and I can give you a call.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Beck has a question. Let's see. Beck, I'm wondering if there is a large demand for children under 5 years. I have qualifications and career experience with this age and feel would suit this age well. Beck, I think that's fantastic. There's children of all ages coming into care, but part of the process of assessing you also assesses what would be suitable for you. And you absolutely can say, I prefer this age group. We can't guarantee that age group, but you can absolutely have a preference. So if you are really well qualified in that, well, then I guess we'd be fools to put up the children with you if you work really well with children at that age. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great question. And, we do have some people who are explicit in terms of saying, for whatever reason, they are explicit that, they would prefer a child of a certain gender or age group, that obviously is taken into consideration. The other thing is, some of our children, as I said, have disabilities or, higher support needs. And if you feel that you aren't equipped to manage that, I always urge people to be upfront with that so we know where we're coming from and we can match accordingly.
Mm-hmm. So Beck's next question is, my concern would be, would some older children have resistance to care, perhaps try and run away? you know, you're always going to get that, whether they're biological or not. Teenagers are teenagers. But I currently have two 15-year-olds in my house, and I've never had any child try and run away. I've had one who says, I'm going to go, but nothing has actually ever eventuated. But I've had that out of my own children too. So look, I think depending on the trauma that the children have had and what their story has been, yes, you are going to get children that could be like that, but you're also going to get children that don't.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, I've come across a lot of children that have absconded, you know, it's not unusual, no. You know, a lot of children want to just get back to their families. That's the reality of it. And they will abscond, you know. But like, you know, that's not every child. And if they do, there's a support system around you. There's a procedure, you know, you're not on your own. There's backup with regards to that.
Hannah's got a question saying, my husband and I are expecting our first child in March. Would that have an effect on the children or us becoming foster carers? I'll give that one to you, Sherry.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, congratulations, Hannah. That's amazing. Yeah, we generally don't suggest that anyone embarks in this journey when you have a child under the age of 2. Yeah, it's particularly because of, you know, child development and risk as well. So probably to wait until your child is at least 2 before starting, you know, this journey would be preferable.
So Karen has a question. What is the situation with schooling? I'm quite time restricted with school drop-offs and getting to work on time. Do the children stay at their current schools, or would they eventually come to my child's school? Obviously, that would be easier for drop-offs. And I can talk to that. All the children that have come into care with us have generally changed to our schools, and they all attend the schools that our children attend. At the time when my children were going to school, they were in private school. So the department were quite happy at the time to put our foster children in the same school with our children. And yes, you're right, it makes drop-offs, and that's so much easier. So we also have a lot of public schools around us. So if we need to do that as a requirement, we just do the rounds. We just do the big circle in the morning, and we do the drop-offs, and they plop out of the car as they go. But yes, 9 times out of 10, the child, if they're going to be on longer term orders, will move to a school that's closer to you or that you're involved with. I think that's all the questions for now. Great questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Perfect. Well, again, thank you everyone for caring enough to listen. And to be interested in this very, very important task. I've heard a carer say it's the hardest job you'll ever love. It's a really, really amazing journey to go on if you choose to. Again, we're really grateful for your attention, and if you'd like to continue the conversation, please don't hesitate to give us a ring. Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, everybody.